Hello. Today we're going to talk about Enlightenment and Romanticism. Enlightenment movement, as we have discussed, it was it was majorly popular in 18th century, and in this particular period of time, there was a lot of progress, which we find in various avenues of human knowledge, not just in art and literature, but also in science and technology, about the social construct, the political science, and economics, and many other areas of human life. And so Enlightenment largely dealt with it is called as Age of Reason, because it largely dealt with the knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge, and depending on empirical evidence, scientific method, and a lot of these things were involved in the process in the Enlightenment period. Enlightenment period is also known as Age of Rationalism, Age of Reason, Rationalism, Enlightenment Rationalism. So these are the names which are very popular. So, but so we can call it as a philosophical movement. The philosophical movement being majorly depending on ontology, and how knowledge is derived, right? So until then, so there were no, I mean, there were different methods of verifying knowledge, but enlightenment, solidified the verifiability of evidences. So I mean, but that doesn't mean that everything which everything in enlightenment period required evidences. It's not like that, but majorly, evidence was one of the major way to pursue knowledge. So other forms being syllogism, where a series of arguments are made, which if the premises of the arguments are correct, then the result, or the final execution, I mean, final result should be true as well. So that was another method which was used during Enlightenment period. So some of the major thinkers of Enlightenment period were René Descartes, John Locke, J.S. Mill, Walter Rousseau, and Montesquieu, Hegel, and Immanuel Kant. So I mean, there were many others, but these are the very important philosophers of the time. René Descartes, of course, cogito ergo sum, which actually translates to I think, therefore I am. Uh, John Locke and J.S. Mill, largely working on politics as well as human rights. Walter Rousseau, Montesquieu, French philosophers, are responsible for the thought that that led to French Revolution. Hegel and Immanuel Kant, again philosophers. So so they are one of the they are the people who led the Enlightenment to a different height, right? So this is the idea of romantic, this is the idea of Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment led to the ideas of democracy, ideas of liberty, ideas of individual right, separation of church and state, the otherwise known as secularism, and so liberty, and so so these are the some of the major values which was propagated during Enlightenment period, and they are very significant for us, like so today, I mean, so we consider these values as the most important values, which we take it as something which is very vital for the functioning of the society. So functioning of the society is important. That will learn little later. So and it also influenced a lot of political revolutions, political revolution doesn't mean there has to be a war. There was a shift in the ideas, because of the emergence of human right, so a lot of you know countries decided to change some of their policies, and the idea of secularism, separation of church and state, was adopted by some other countries, which is again something which is very significant in human history. But also two major revolutions, that is American and French revolutions, were largely influenced by Enlightenment period. So then we have Romanticism. So our major point of discussion today is Enlightenment and Romanticism. Of course, I have discussed a majority of it in you know, the videos related to French Revolution, but still, today we are going to deal Enlightenment in detail and the relation to Romanticism in detail. So Romanticism, as you know, that it's uh, you know, it's a art movement and philosophical movement, which emerged again in 18th century. Uh, and largely, it was very late 18th century, in fact. So almost, Wordsworth wrote in 1790s. Uh, so a little before that was Blake, but 1790s is when we consider Romanticism took its major steps, and from there it reaches till the mid 19th century. So so Romanticism was, uh, Romanticism was a movement, art movement, philosophical movement, which believed in individual liberty, individual experience, emotions, and so it is majorly, for example, romantic poetry. Romantic poetry is about how an individual experience things, how an individual feels things. If you see romantic painting, it is not a realistic depiction of something, but a beautified depiction of something. So it is not real. So romanticism is, it doesn't focus on the uh, values of reality. It's not realistic per se. It is, it is beautified. It is, majorly focusing on how one would view something. So a lot of it deals with emotions, it deals with imagination, and especially romantic poetry involves a lot of things dealing with nature. So so that is very important here. And romantic writers, so again, so that is, anyway, you would have known by now. So William Blake, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, and Shelley. Then you have Goethe, who is also, I mean, not an English writer, but yeah. But when it comes to novelists, you have Mary Shelley, and Jane Austen. You can't forget Jane Austen. So and many other writers as well. So I mean, these are the major people, major writers, who uh, who wrote during the Romantic period, and so how do we look at Enlightenment and Romanticism? Romanticism, to an extent, was a reaction to, Enlightenment. It is largely influenced by Enlightenment. To an extent, we can say it's an opposite of Enlightenment, but not completely. So this is something which is funny. Uh, it is not completely an opposite, right? It is not the same, right? It is definitely influenced by, Enlightenment. Uh, to an extent, it is opposite of Enlightenment, but not completely. So, what do I mean by this? So again, I don't want it to be confusing. So let me clarify some of the contrasting things which you find in uh, Romanticism and Enlightenment is Enlightenment majorly deals with the reason. Yeah? Enlightenment is called as age of reason, right? So enlightenment largely deal with reason, right? In the reason, in the sense, thinking, and so it is, scientific reasoning. All these things are very important when in enlightenment period. So things as they are, so that is the primary understanding of that is the primary focus of enlightenment, whereas romanticism is more about emotions, right? So a person of enlightenment thinks of how, what is the right situation, but romanticism is more about appreciating, right? It's more about it's more about how emotions and feelings are portrayed. So I mean, you read any of the poems of romantic period. There are emotions which are involved, and so, and they are the emotions are not just involved. That is poetry. Of course, poetry will have certain emotions, no doubt, but emotion itself is a central uh, concept of a romantic poetry, right? So I mean, so the world is too much with us. If you take that poem, the world is too much with us. So if it was a rational poem, it would be just about how the nature is being destroyed. But that is not how Wordsworth presented. The Wordsworth presented as a person's reaction to what is happening around. How would a person feel in a given circumstance? All right. So that is the difference between Enlightenment period and the Romantic period. So Romantic period is, it is very focused on the emotions of individuals, right? So another contrasting approach which we find between these two concepts is science and nature. Enlightenment is, it's a scientific thought. I mean, at least it was considered as scientific. Now again, what science means, changes over a period of time for sure. But by then, at least, it was thought as a scientific movement, and scientific exploration was given a lot of importance. Uh, uh, Whereas, romantic they emphasized on nature, right? So beauty and the preservation of nature. So today, if you go to any scientist, they say that nature is important, and we have to preserve environment. So that is the primary idea. But by then, that was not the case for majority of the scientists, and science meant that steam engine. Science meant innovation. Science meant industry. So that was the that was the approach of science by then, like so advancement, innovation, and technology, factories, all that production. um and romantics took time to say that. I mean, romantics took effort to say that we have to appreciate nature, we have to preserve nature, right? So that was the contrasting approach you find between enlightenment and romanticism. Then uh, one more issue which you find the contrasting here is the society and individual. Enlightenment period looks at society. It looks at how in society, that is how people are placed in the society, and what is the right thing to do in a political system, in a state, and all that, right? So JS Mill, you can find out about JS Mill and John Locke for that, so a lot of things are you can learn from it. Again, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Voltaire focused on, like so how a state should be, and what is the liberty uh, that could be enjoyed by its citizens, and all that. So So that was, the primary focus of enlightenment was society. But when it comes to romantic, it is not society which becomes important. It is the individuals who becomes important. It is the personal issues which becomes important. Person becomes important. So it is not the story, but the storyteller, that is important in romanticism. So you can't, for example, modern poetry, you can make a distinction between story and a storyteller, but in romantic, works, you can't make that distinction. So that is, one of the, contrasting features of, enlightenment and romanticism. And however, so these are the opposites. But just but they are not just opposites, so that we have to understand. um Enlightenment laid a certain groundwork. For example, enlightenment led to the concepts of liberty, equality, fraternity, and these values were important for romantics as well. So individual liberty is definitely something which was valued by romantics. Individuality was valued by romantics, and individuality and liberty. So they uh, were the result of enlightenment. So we have to accept that. And we can't speak about the, the relationship between, Enlightenment and Romanticism without talking about French Revolution. So, I of course have a different lecture on French Revolution and Romantic poetry. But of course, so this, just adding things to it, and somewhat remembering things from that. So uh, French Revolution, of course, had a impact on romanticism, uh, majorly in terms of themes, right? So freedom, liberty, and humanitarianism was the primary focus of French Revolution. So the slogan of French Revolution was liberty, equality, fraternity. But so rephrasing it, freedom, political liberty, and humanitarianism. If not political liberty, liberty in general. So, uh, and these are the values which were emphasized by romantic writers as well. So, in that manner, French Revolution had a direct impact on romantic poetry. But there were many other impacts which were not direct, right? So those indirect responses were, uh, one, that many, writers are the thinkers. So writers were responding to the events of French Revolution, right? So many writers wrote their poems, thinking of French Revolution. Majorly Coleridge and Wordsworth wrote, regarding French Revolution. But they understood that, French Revolution failed as soon as Robespierre took, Robespierre came to power. The French Revolution failed, and so there was some kind of disillusionment which was present among the writers. So that is, one thing which you can see. Another, during this period of French Revolution, there was a lot of bloodshed, right? So that bloodshed, it elevated the emotional states of individuals, right? So when there is bloodshed right in front of you, you can't be not emotional, right? So you can't afford to be not emotional. So the writers were emotional during the period of time, and they responded similarly. And so that is why, that is why romantic poetry, is very emotional, to to say the least. So that was one of the impacts of French Revolution, but not a direct impact. I got to admit. So, but an indirect, indirect effect of French Revolution. Then, of course, so there was a little bit of influence on the style as well, with the new thought arising. Uh, so as the Enlightenment to an extent was against existing ideas. So that spirit that spirit was extended to writing as well. So new forms of writings were adopted. Instead of metrical writing, free verse became very popular. You shouldn't just see it as a new form, but also a libertarian idea, right? So in a free verse, you can write, unrestricted. In a metrical poetry, you have to restrict yourself. So that is that is the how enlightenment influenced the style of writing. So then, just talking about the things which directly influence some of the works, and I'm just going to mention it. Um, so there are, for example, the poem Prelude by Wordsworth has some uh, lines of which are indicating that indicating towards French Revolution, right? And Coleridge's France and Ode, the poem France and Ode, is about how French Revolution failed to bring out the stability. So there are some other works as well. You can refer to my notes. So these are the major works which were the direct result of French Revolution and Enlightenment. So uh, they, Enlightenment was very influential, and if there was no Enlightenment, there wouldn't have been Romanticism. So that is why so that is why it is important to learn both of those, uh, together. And of course, when you are reading the poems of Romantic period, you will get a better idea on how the concept of liberty, the concept of individuality is emphasized by these writers. Hope you'll be able to, read more poems, learn things by yourself, and enjoy the reading. That's the most important. If you can't enjoy poetry, it will be a task to learn it. And so that will not be enjoyable. That will not be something which is pleasurable. Hope you read poems and enjoy it. Thank you.